The European Union, a symbol of post-war unity and cooperation, now finds itself grappling with internal tensions that threaten its long-term cohesion. What began as a project to foster peace, economic integration, and political alignment among European nations has increasingly become a complex structure marked by divergent interests, ideological rifts, and varying national priorities. From economic disparities and migration challenges to political nationalism and foreign policy disagreements, the EU faces a host of issues that test the limits of its unity. The question remains, can the European Union survive its internal divisions? One of the core challenges facing the EU is the economic disparity between member states. The Eurozone crisis of the late 2000s exposed deep structural flaws in the economic framework of the Union. While northern countries like Germany and the Netherlands have thrived under the common currency, southern economies such as Greece, Italy, and Spain have struggled with debt, stagnation, and austerity measures. These economic imbalances create resentment and foster nationalist sentiments, with some citizens viewing the EU as a tool of economic oppression rather than solidarity. The North-South divide continues to be a source of friction, especially when it comes to fiscal policies, bailout programs, and the EU budget. In addition to economic issues, migration has become a deeply polarizing topic within the Union. The 2015 refugee crisis significantly tested the EU's solidarity. Countries like Germany and Sweden adopted open-door policies, while others, particularly in Eastern Europe, such as Hungary and Poland, vehemently opposed accepting large numbers of refugees. This divide was not just a matter of numbers, but reflected broader cultural and political differences. The Schengen Agreement, which allows passport-free travel across most of the EU, came under pressure as several member states reintroduced border controls. The inability to reach a cohesive, long-term migration policy continues to be a flashpoint, reflecting a deeper rift in values and identity among member nations. The rise of nationalism and Euroscepticism further complicates the EU's internal dynamics. Across the continent, populist parties have gained ground by criticizing Brussels bureaucracy and advocating for national sovereignty. In countries like Italy, France, Hungary, and the Netherlands, such parties have questioned the benefits of EU. Membership called for the return of certain powers to national governments, and in some cases, even floated the idea of leaving the Union. Brexit, the United Kingdom's decision to leave the EU, was a watershed moment that underscored how popular discontent can translate into seismic political change. Although no other country has followed the UK's path, the precedent has emboldened Eurosceptic forces elsewhere. Foreign policy is another area where divisions are stark. The EU aspires to be a global actor, but its member states often have conflicting interests. The war in Ukraine has brought these contradictions into sharp focus. While there is broad consensus on supporting Ukraine and sanctioning Russia, differences remain regarding the level of military aid, energy dependence, and diplomatic strategy. Some countries, heavily reliant on Russian gas, were initially hesitant to support stringent sanctions. Others have pushed for a more aggressive stance. Similarly, when dealing with China, the EU has struggled to formulate a unified policy, with some members prioritizing economic ties and others emphasizing human rights and security concerns. These internal divisions are not merely theoretical challenges, they have tangible consequences for the EU's ability to act decisively and maintain public trust. The decision-making process in the EU is already complex, requiring consensus or qualified majority voting among 27 diverse nations. When those nations are divided, paralysis can ensue. This undermines the EU's effectiveness and credibility, both internally and on the global stage. Citizens grow disillusioned with an institution that seems increasingly unable to address their concerns or deliver concrete results. Despite these challenges, the European Union has demonstrated resilience in the face of adversity. The COVID-19 pandemic tested the Union's ability to coordinate a collective response. And while there were initial missteps, the EU eventually launched a historic recovery fund, distributing billions in aid to help member states rebuild their economies. This was a significant step toward fiscal solidarity, signaling that the EU could adapt and innovate when under pressure. Similarly, the unified stance on Russia following the invasion of Ukraine, though imperfect, presented a remarkable moment of cohesion and resolve. Moreover, the EU continues to be a powerful magnet for neighboring countries. Nations in the Western Balkans and even Ukraine itself aspire to join the Union, seeing it as a pathway to stability, prosperity, and democracy. This speaks to the enduring appeal of the European project, despite its flaws. Internally, many citizens still support the EU in principle, even if they are critical of its current functioning. The European Parliament elections, though often reflecting domestic discontent, have also served as a platform for transnational debates on climate change, digital policy, and human rights, showing that a pan-European political space is not only possible, but evolving. For the EU to survive and thrive, it must confront its internal divisions head-on. Structural reforms are needed to streamline decision-making, enhance democratic accountability, and reduce economic disparities. A more flexible and pragmatic approach to integration could help accommodate diverse national interests without sacrificing core values. The EU may need to rethink the concept of ever closer union and explore variable geometry models, where different groups of countries integrate at different speeds or levels in specific areas. This could allow the EU to remain united while respecting diversity. Leadership also matters. Strong visionary leadership at both the national and EU levels is crucial to navigate through crises and build consensus. The next generation of European leaders must articulate a compelling narrative about the EU's purpose in the 21st century, one that goes beyond technocracy and speaks to citizens' hopes and fears. This narrative must balance unity and sovereignty, openness and security, progress and tradition. In the final analysis, the survival of the European Union depends not only on institutional reforms or crisis management, but on the collective will of its member states and citizens to continue this shared journey. The EU is not a static entity. It is a living project that evolves with time. Its internal divisions are real and significant, but they are not insurmountable. History has shown that the EU often takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back. The question is whether the next steps will lead to deeper unity or further fragmentation. The answer lies in how the Union chooses to confront its challenges, adapt to change, and reimagine its future in an increasingly uncertain world.